How are you doing, Lena?
I'm doing well. How's everybody?
Doing well.
I'm doing well. As weird as this situation is,
Great.
Yeah.
we're doing the best we can.
Exactly. All you can ask for.
Yeah. So our task is to talk about samples and then answer questions and see where we're going from there. Is that the plan?
Yes.
And anything we should be doing before we take a look at beeps?
Not that I can think of.
Is this your 10th day wearing the beeper, Lena? Or 11th?
I want to. Is it the 11? I think it's 11.
Okay, I couldn't remember that.
It is.
Yes, it is. It is the 11th.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Cool.
I'm ready.
Thank you.
Beep number
All
one.
right, so beep number one. Okay, so this was what happened. In the moment of the beep, I said, frickin' frack. Kind of like what I say when I'm whatever. So I said, frickin' frack, and I was opening the door to the side of the house to throw out some trash. And at the same time, my friend Casey was talking to me about a funny video. And so I'm listening to her, and I said, frickin' frack, and I'm taking out the trash. And we had, just before that occurred, we had just discussed how easy it is in your house when you buy a house, just like how fast things wear and tear. So I was like still kind of thinking that, even though we were now talking about this funny video she was telling me about, and I was taking out the trash, and then said that thing. And so the beep caught me in that entire moment.
So it sounds like there's sort of multiple strands of consciousness or experience or whatever we want to call that ongoing at the same time.
Correct.
And are all those things in your experience? Like you're saying frickin' frack aloud,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of your experience. It's not just a verbal gesture.
Yes, saying it was part of my experience. The only thing that wasn't directly something that I felt was in my experience was the act of taking the trash out.
Okay.
That to me was
So-
more automatic.
So the opening the door portion of that's just happening. It's a fact of the universe that's ongoing, but that's not really part of my experience.
Correct.
So part of my experience is basically three strands, then frickin' frack. Your friend Casey is talking about the video, and you're still remembering about the wear and tear
Conversation, yeah.
conversation. And is any of those more present than any other?
The remembering of, like, because we had just had the conversation, so it was still very fresh in my mind, and in my mind it was very present to me, thinking about just how the wear and tear after you buy a house, just like how much goes into maintaining, and like I was still very wrapped up in thinking about the responsibility of a home.
And by very, do you mean 50% or 70% or?
I would say I was at about 60% involved in that thought, and the remainder of it focused on what Casey was saying.
And how about the frickin' frack portion, or is that?
Oh yeah, and the freaking frack portion, I would say like the last 10% I was experiencing myself saying that word. Yeah.
60, 30, 10?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with the 60 portion. So I'm somehow involved with how much maintenance is required in a new house.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically about how intense it is that you could buy something and how fast the thing itself can wear and tear. Like I'm thinking of just the wear and tear of things, and more so in that respect.
And how does that thought present itself to you?
I'm seeing it as more of a thought. I'm not having a visual experience as what I would normally have. It's, I guess, more cognitive. Like it's more coming to me in a more cognitive way. I don't seem to have any obvious feelings about it, just more of a realization of, wow, yeah, this is, the wear and tear of a home is, or of any material thing is, it's going to happen. Everything is going to get ruined at some point, especially with
the world is downhill from here.
Yeah, just kind of in that state of mind, not necessarily seeing it visually, not necessarily feeling about it, just more having a little bit of a realization about just how fast things kind of wear out.
And not words, I'm gathering. It's not like I'm saying to myself, things always wear out, but I'm somehow knowing that things wear out.
Yeah, just kind of a little bit of a realization.
And so to summarize this portion, I'm gathering that this is like a cognitive consideration, analysis, realization, not particularly emotional, not worded, not imaged, but yet directly in front of the footlights of consciousness cognition.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Casey is talking about the funny video. Is she talking at this particular moment?
Yeah, she's talking, and I'm experiencing her talking, and I'm hearing her talking. I'm hearing her words, and listening. But at the same time, I'm thinking what the thought about the wear and tear.
So I'm hearing and processing what she's saying. It's not like I've left that entirely, but
right.
But it's less prominent than the wear and tear thought.
Yes. Yeah. She's not at the forefront of my experience. Like, I'm not totally engaged in what she's saying, but I am listening. I am receiving her words, and I am hearing what she's saying, and I know what she's talking about. I know what she's trying to tell me, but I'm also at the same time having my own involved thoughts.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then on to the frickin' frack portion. So I am saying frickin' frack.
Yeah.
And is that in relationship to anything? Where does that? I'm not sure I understand what frickin' frack.
So in the moment that I said that, as Casey's talking to me, as I'm having my own little thought, I was opening the door to take the trash out, and the door was locked. So when I realized it was locked and I tried to pull it open really hard and it didn't open, I just, not directly really loud or anything, but to myself, was like, frickin' frack, and that had just so happened that the beep caught me while I was saying that.
And is frickin' frack like a mild expletive of frustration that the door won't open?
Froze.
Like it could be oh pshaw.
Are we still frozen?
So I can see. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think she said that we froze. So I don't know.
Hey.
Oh, now I can.
I don't know what happened there. I'm back
No,
though. So your question was ask again. Sorry.
What I was asking about the frickin' frack portion, and does frickin' frack express a mild irritation at the door being stuck? Is that do I have that right?
Yeah, but more so like it's very lighthearted. Like I don't feel very frustrated or too frustrated or really frustrated. It's just more like, I don't know. It's not super frustrated.
But it's aimed at the door not opening when you wish it would be opening.
Correct. Yeah.
And you could have said "oh pshaw" or something like that, and it would have had the same. Is that right?
Yes, it was, but it was more playful when I said it. Like I wasn't saying it like, with a whole lot of like anger behind it or anything. It was like, oh, frickin' frack, like just kind of lighthearted. So it was aimed at the door for not opening, but it wasn't necessarily meant out of like sheer frustration. It was kind of more on the playful side.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The door and I are having a slight conversation about it's being stubborn and opening the door, and I'm responding frickin' frack or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I think I'm, and this is inner. Are you saying that aloud or out or to yourself? Or
Frickin' frack?
Yeah.
Yeah, out loud. I said it out loud.
All right, then I think I'm good.
Me too. Number 2.
All right. Number 2 was I was talking to Mila, going through her schoolwork from the past year, reviewing the school year with her, and at the moment of the beep, I said the sentence, "These are all your reports." And at the same time, going through it and saying that, I was feeling impressed by her and thinking about like how great of an artist she is, and she's really, really good at drawing. And I was just feeling really impressed and proud, and yeah, that was a beep number 2.
Okay. And so are there 2 things in your experience here?
Yeah, I would say the first is that I'm going through her stuff with her, reviewing the year, and the second is just the feeling of being impressed and proud.
Okay. And are you more interested in going through the work or more interested in your feeling proud?
I think they kind of both are simultaneous. They are together.
And together as in like equally present, or together as in they kind of seem like one experience that has these 2 aspects?
Yeah, together as in the 2 things together feel like one experience.
Okay. And am I understanding right that neither is really dominating the experience? It's not like even though it's really one thing, it's not like I'm really mostly into the feeling.
I'm mostly into feeling proud. The going through her stuff is more, it's present to me, like I'm experiencing that directly, but in terms of the feelings that I'm having, that's more obvious to me. The feelings about her accomplishments from the past year has me more focused on that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And more like 80-20 or more like 60-40, or doesn't really make sense?
70-30. Yeah, I would say that 70% of me was more focused on the feelings and the other 30% focused on just going through her stuff.
Okay. Well, let's start with the feeling proud and impressed. Mm-hmm. At the outset, you described that in kind of a few ways. You said, like, I'm impressed by her. She's a great artist. I'm proud. Were all of those like synonymous? They're all describing kind of one experience? Or were there discrete things? Like, I'm somehow noticing her as an artist and I'm feeling proud and...
Yeah, I'm noticing her artwork, realizing she's becoming such a great artist, and also seeing her other work that's unrelated to her drawing, just, little reports that she's done, and seeing how great and how much time she clearly put into it. So like there's just like a bunch of like little things that I'm realizing that she's, has come a long way in and seems to have like a natural talent. So my feelings towards each of those things was being impressed and feeling proud of her. So like each thing, like, oh yeah, I'm realizing, oh, she's such a good little artist, and I always knew she liked to draw, but now she's actually drawing really well, and feeling for that, and then seeing her little reports and realizing how much time she put into that and feeling impressed by that as well. So each kind of thing that I'm pulling out, I'm having this compounding experience of just realizing how talented my daughter is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to understand if, are all of the little, like the art and the reports, are those directly present to you, either a few of them or one of them or whatever? Or are those sort of the context here? Like, certainly on some level, you are processing that, like, that's a good drawing, and this was a report, and all of that kind of stuff. And really, in my experience, is just feeling impressed. It's spawned by these things, but it's not like I have a direct experience at this moment of her art and realizing she's a good artist and all this stuff. Or is there feeling impressed and present to me are the things that impress me?
Yes, present to me the things that impress me. Like, I am very aware of what I'm looking at. I'm aware of what she's accomplished and experiencing the art, like really seeing the art that she created and in of itself. And then at the same time having the feelings of being proud and impressed by her work and her dedication. Does that answer it a little better?
I think I'm getting there. So, okay. So it's not just that I have the feeling, I'm also aware of what's driving it, the things that she's done that impress me.
Yes.
And we've talked about a few of them. Are there multiple, like, is at the moment of the beep, am I looking at a particular piece of artwork and my experience is about that? Or do you know what I mean? Like, where exactly does the beep interrupt this? Because I imagine the going through all the stuff has been kind of a lengthy process.
Yeah. There was a lot of things that we were going through. At the moment of the beep, I had a particular thing in front of me, one of her reports, which had her drawings in it. But my whole experience was not just that one report. My whole experience was having seen all of her work, well, so far, all of the work that I had pulled out of the bag, and experiencing those feelings and realizing that she's experiencing the art that she's created, as we were saying before, and then also feeling the feelings of being proud.
So I really am, like, somehow holding in mind or something all of the stuff we've been through, and my feelings are compounded each time I see another thing that impresses me or something like that.
Yes. So like each thing I pull out, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh my God, wow, this is so good. And then the next thing I pull out, thinking the same thing and having those feelings of being proud and being distinctly aware of each of the things that I'm looking at. Like, that was part of my experience, seeing her art, and then of course on top of that, the feelings that came with it from seeing her art.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this report that includes some of her art,
Yeah.
and I'm aware of that, like, I'm seeing it, and it is contributing to my feeling proud and impressed. But it's not just this report. I'm also somehow experiencing, holding in mind, aware of all the other stuff that has impressed me about her today or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's this going through the stuff and not doing that mindlessly, like, I'm aware of these things that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the feeling proud and impressed.
Okay.
And all of the comments about, like, oh, she used to like to draw and now I'm seeing she's a really good artist, and all that stuff that sounds kind of like analytical or evaluative about her or something. Is that intended to describe, like, there's a separate thought process or something going on? Or is that just, if I had to put my feeling into words, it's, man, like, she used to like to draw and I'm so proud that she's turned this into a skill? And does that question make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, there's like a like in simultaneous to the feeling of being impressed by her, there's a recognition, and it's not necessarily this loud voice, like this loud script or anything, but it's just like a very subtle recognition that she has come such a long way in her artistic skill. Like just a very subtle, doesn't need a whole lot of dialogue to it, but just the realization that, oh, my daughter she's improved, her skills have improved, and I should probably, well, that's separate, that's not having anything to do with it, but just the feeling of being impressed, and then yes, that subtle realization that her skills have improved.
Okay. And those things are certainly related, but they're separate. There's a feeling and there's also this realization. Is that?
Yeah, they kind of work together. Like seeing her new stuff and seeing how great she is kind of just triggered the realization that she's doing so well and she's improving. Like they kind of work together in a way.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's go to the feeling for a minute. So what exactly do you feel?
So when I say like feeling impressed, it's just feeling like in awe of her, like just feeling like it's a feeling of how do I say it? The impressed feeling is like a combination of feeling proud that she's stuck with something and has improved on it over time, knowing that she has good follow through, and then the impressed feeling on top is like also a combination of just this awness, like this feeling in awe that, oh my God, this is my child, like she came out of me and this is what she's doing. And, you know, that combination with also just feeling like her character, like that follow through is so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the feeling of impressed that I was getting in that moment.
And is this like an emotional thing?
Yeah, but it's not an intense emotion or anything. Like I'm not on the verge of tears or anything. It's just like just like it's not super strong to the point where I'm overcome by it or anything. But
Okay.
it's very obvious to me. Like I feel like very obvious to that feeling. Like I'm aware of the feeling. And to some degree, you know, she has to be as well because my reaction.
Yeah. And does it make sense to call this like a mental thing or a bodily thing or?
I would say it's more mental. I wouldn't consider this a bodily thing.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going through her stuff and I'm taking note of all of it and maybe especially the art aspect of her stuff. Is that right?
Yes.
And I'm having this emotional reaction to it. I'm feeling proud and impressed and I can't believe she's mine and I love that she sticks with this and she's so talented and that is I don't experience that in my body. This is not a physical thing. This is a mental kind of thing. And then I guess I'm still trying to understand, is there some like cognitive like experience or when we've called this like I'm realizing that she's a good artist, is that a cognitive thing or is that like a visual thing? Like in looking at this report, I glean that she's a good artist or I don't know.
Yeah, it's I would say there's an aspect of cognitive mental process going on, mixed with some emotion, and you know, those two things together somehow creating the experience for me. And in feeling the emotion, it seems to develop more starting out from a cognitive perspective, that then seems to go into a more emotion. Like I'm triggered by the cognitive thoughts of the realization of her talent that takes me into the emotional aspect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like this cognitive emotional thing, like these are really tied up together.
Yeah.
Like the thinky portion and the feeling portion are really kind of inseparable.
Yeah. They seem to happen in tandem and next to each other.
Okay. Then I think I'm good.
Me too. Number 3.
Cool. Alrighty. Okay, so beep number 3 is I I was organizing some clothes in my closet, and out loud I said, I think it's too shallow. And at the same time, in my mind, I'm having like a visualization of what would be the best way to arrange things in their drawers and organize everything in such a way that would make sense. And I'm having a visual experience of that by like, I take the closet and I kind of stand there really quiet for whatever period of time. And I just started to visualize how I would rearrange it in my head and see if it would work before actually doing it. So that's where I was at in the middle of the beep.
And so at the moment of this beep, what exactly do you see in this visualization?
I'm visualizing what it would look like by changing the organization of the clothes. So I'm seeing all of the things that I want in this drawer, in the drawer, in my visualization, and how that would look, how that would be, as well as what it would look like, how it would be if I organize this over here differently. So I'm kind of using my visual guidance and my visual aids to kind of figure out how things would work.
So I think I've got the general gist of the process here, but the specifics I haven't yet figured out. So at the moment of this beep, are you seeing one drawer or seeing two drawers or seeing one drawer in two states or?
Yeah, it's kind of choppy. So I'm seeing one drawer is rearranged in this way and then this drawer over here in this way. And it's kind of like going back and forth. Like it's not one or the other, but it's like but I'm doing it so fast in my mind that I can't really say I'm solely focused over here and solely focused over here. It kind of feels like my brain was trying to do and organize things in my vision in multiple ways at the same time.
So it seems like there is a stream of images, stream of seeing of a drawer. That's, I see it this way, and then I see it a different way, and then I see it a different way, and then I see it a different way. Is that right?
Yes.
So it's not like this is a collage where I see these side by side, or some kind of a translucenty thing where I can see through one into the next. I see some alternating, first this, then that, then this other thing. Is that right?
Yeah, alternating like back and forth on itself, like not necessarily like alternating from here's one drawer to the next drawer to the next drawer. It's kind of like I'm bouncing these drawers, like I'm seeing it.
Drawer A this way, drawer B that way, drawer A again this way, this other way, drawer A this other way, drawer B this other way, or something like that.
Yeah, kind of just going back and forth and just kind of like that.
And in your rendition of it, you make it seem like it's happening like faster than 1 a second. 1 a second would be like this, and you make it like a quarter of a second or half a second or something. Is that right?
Yeah, to me, I feel like it feels to me that process in my mind is happening really, really rapidly.
Okay. And so in describing it, you say, well, it happens really rapidly. Does it seem rapidly at the moment? Like I'm rapidly doing this, rapidly doing that, rapidly doing this, or is my experience of I see this, and then I see this, and then I see this, and yet I know that it's happening at a quarter of a second at a time.
Yeah, to me, it feels like it's not as rapid, but I know that it's not taking a very long time. Like I know that it's a rapid experience, but to me, it feels like it's not too rapid. I can still understand what I'm trying to organize. It's not
so I have an experience of alternation, but I don't have an experience of rapid alternation, even though in the real neuronal world, if we could see that, we would see rapid alternation. Is that right?
Yes. Like I understand that I'm doing this fast, but I also know that the way it experiences itself to me is not, it's not this very fast kind of like rapid thing. It doesn't experience like that to me directly, but I know that it's happening rapidly.
Got it. And I'm understanding that the different views are ways that I could organize it. I could put my socks here and I could put my whatever over there.
Yep.
And okay.
Yeah.
And is each one of these scenes relatively well differentiated? Like I see the individual things which could be in this drawer.
Yeah, so I'll visualize, for example, the socks in this drawer, and then I'll go through a rapid thought of how the functionality of those socks being in that particular drawer will be for me. Is it more functional that it's there, or is it more functional that it's over here? Like, I'm trying to figure out what the most functional way to organize things.
And is that going through the functionality? Is that a visual thing, or is that a cognitive thing, or like do I visually see them over there? And
yeah.
So this is a sequence of visual seeings that answer the question, well, would it be better for me to have it over there or over here? Well, I'll see it over there and see what that looks like, and then I'll see it over here and see what that looks like, kind of a deal. Okay. And then at the same time, I'm thinking it's too shallow. You say that. I think it's too shallow. Are you saying that out loud or in your...
Yeah, I said it out loud. I actually said it to my friend Casey. And in saying that, I was having my visual experience of what this drawer would be best for. And in visualizing putting that stuff in there, I was able to visualize, oh, this is too shallow, it won't work. And that's...
So you're on the phone with Casey, or is she there?
She's there in person.
Uh-huh. So she's there in person with you, and you're thinking about, together you're contemplating how to reorganize your closet.
Correct.
And you say out loud to her, I think it's too shallow, while at the same time having this sequence of potential organizational drawer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, then I think I'm good.
Me too.
All right. Fantastic. Okay, so beep number 4, I was talking on the phone with my brother, and we were actually discussing consciousness, and he was talking, but I wasn't really paying attention to his words as much in this moment because I was thinking about something we had just talked about still, and I was thinking about whether or not bodily harm or damage to the body affects the ability to be conscious or to have consciousness. So I was stuck in that thought, but I knew my brother was talking. I just wasn't totally focused on his words. I couldn't tell you what he was saying. I just know he was talking. And then I was having this experience. And at the same time of doing that, I was making myself tea. But the making of the tea was very automatic. Like, I wasn't focused on putting the tea bag and putting the hot water in. I was mainly just very focused on the thought.
Okay, so you are in fact making tea and on the phone, but those things aren't really what's going on in my experience. Mostly I'm wrapped up in my thought about consciousness and bodily harm.
Correct.
Okay. And how exactly does this thought present itself to you?
It's kind of the same as what I said before in the past, like that sensing, wondering thing, where I am deeply sensing, wondering about the question that I have. And to me, in this particular moment, it does have a very cognitive, mental tone to it. And emotionally, what's there is, if consciousness, if a damaged body or sick body or whatever doesn't get to have consciousness, then it was I had the feeling of like, it's hard to explain. Like, it was like a feeling like thinking that, I don't know how to explain the feeling part, but it was I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you have a question that will kind of pry it open a little bit. So there was a feeling about it. There was also this cognitive mental thing about it, and this feeling about it. But I don't know how to describe the feeling about it.
Mm-hmm. So you said this is like the sensing, wondering beeps we've had in the past?
Mm-hmm.
And so am I understanding right that it's not enough just to say, well, I'm thinking about what it means when someone's body's harmed and how that impacts consciousness?
Yeah.
It's bigger than that, deeper than that. Is that right? As far as your experience goes?
To me, yes. It feels that it's, well, in terms of the sensing and feeling, I feel like it's the same mode. Like I'm using the same sensing skill in reflecting on whatever that thought is, or it's like I'm taking a moment to think about the question, and then in my sensing, I'm trying to find the answer. Like I'm trying to sense the answer, but I know that I don't have the answer. And so then the feeling of that is like, I don't want to call it discomfort, but it is kind of uncomfortable and almost kind of like, well, what's the point kind of feeling? Like there's like a pointlessness feeling behind it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I am deeply engaged with this question, and I am opening myself up or whatever to the answer if I can sense it.
Yeah.
And this is mental in some ways, but it's also, there's like an emotion twinge here. And it sounds like that's a little hard to describe, but it's something like pointless, or is that right?
Yeah, like there's like a, like maybe not pointless, maybe like a sense of defeat kind of, you know, kind of like, oh, well, if my body gets damaged or sick, or if anyone's bodies get damaged or sick, well, then now I don't have access to consciousness or something, you know, like it was kind of like a sensing of, or not sensing, I'm sorry, feeling of feeling defeated by that idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's not that I feel defeated, like I can't answer this question. It's the situation I'm thinking about that's defeating.
Yeah.
Like if my body were ever damaged or compromised, that feels
right.
That's upsetting that I wouldn't be conscious or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I don't feel defeated that I don't have the answer. I mean, maybe to some degree there is like a frustration of not being able to just quickly have the answer, but more feeling defeated on not having the, as we said, just feeling defeated because if somebody's body was to be damaged or harmed or sick or anything, that they would have if that notion is true, then it would mean that they don't have access to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so would it be they that's defeated?
Correct. They, whoever would be in that category of some type of bodily damage or harm.
So this would be a feeling, an empathic feeling for somebody in that situation.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's this kind of, as I'm understanding it, this kind of like complicated interplay between this idea, this question and kind of idea I have, this notion about bodily harm and consciousness, and then that is giving rise to this empathic feeling of, oh, whoever's in that situation, like how kind of pointless this would be, like how defeated they would feel. And is all of that what we're calling sensing, or is sensing, is there more to get to understand sensing?
I'm still really having a hard time breaking down what that feels like. It's almost kind of like I am not really in my body kind of feeling. Like I'm taking myself outside of myself. I am not associated to me, but I am associated to my feelings still. Like I still feel how I feel about it. And I still feel how I would think they as in the other people would feel about it. And having that attachment to myself is just through my emotion. But yeah, like the sensing kind of feels like I'm leaving myself a little bit disassociating.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say that on our last sampling day, we sometimes use terms like I'm folded back over on myself, or I'm having this bird's eye experience of my own experience. Is this like that?
It's similar. It's not exactly like that, because in that particular beep, when I heard myself, I think it was my daughter, the one with my daughter, like that was I was very aware of what I was doing in a kind of like a third person kind of thing. In this particular case, I was aware of the thought. I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of my feelings. But I'm outside of myself. So I'm not aware of anything else. I'm not aware of my brother. I'm not aware of my environment. I'm not aware of the chair I'm sitting on or the tea that I'm making or whatever, you know. I'm just aware of what's happening internally and being out of myself for that brief time that I was thinking or whatever I was doing. Yeah.
So this seems, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so this seems like it shares the kind of meta perspective quality, but here there's like an extra detached, like I'm only outside. I'm not even really in my own experience. I'm like purely observer. That doesn't feel quite right, but something like that.
It's like, okay, so I'm having this sensing, and in that sensing, it's almost as if I am going out of my body. Like I'm out of myself. I'm no longer completely in myself. But it's not so detached to the point where I don't sense my body anymore, you know, or I don't sense my feelings, because I still have my feelings. Like I'm not just completely gone, you know, kind of thing, like catatonic or anything, but I'm still here, but everything is muted. That is not directly related to whatever it is that I'm sensing, so to speak. Like my brother was muted. The fact that I was making tea had nothing. It was just totally automatic. You know, didn't realize exactly how I was doing it. You know, I was very focused on just that thought being outside of myself in that. Does that answer it a little bit better? Or is there another?
So let me try putting it into words here and see what this works like. So I feel defeated, but it's not that I, Lena, feel defeated. It's that I feel the defeat that someone whose body has been damaged or sick or something would feel. So I've left Lena to experience the bodily damaged person's defeat. But I haven't left Lena entirely. This is not entirely depersonalization. I have transported some of myself into this sort of solar system about the defeated person, about the damaged person. And we have used the word sensing in sometimes when I have viewed that of myself. So I can have like an empathic feeling of myself in a way. I can leave the main Lena and observe the Lena who is, or not really observe, but experience this other Lena in sort of an empathic way that is what we call the meta awareness.
I would say that you're on the right track towards what I might say.
Okay. It's a tricky thing to describe.
Right. Because I know that I wish I could like project what, you know, my whole experience on a board, because I know there's things that are hard to do.
We wish you could do that.
I know, like I wish I could just somehow send it out there, but yeah, it's hard to get it fully explained in a way that gives it its full understanding. But yes, I think that what you said describes my experience.
I think we're on the track. I don't know that I would say that we have received entirely what you're trying to send, but I think we're doing better than.
Agreed.
Can I compare this to beep number 1 real quick?
Sure. So
in beep number 1, we had kind of a straightforward thinking thing, right? Like I'm thinking about how quickly houses wear and tear, and I did not get, there was no sensing in that one. Is that right? It didn't have this depth, this meta thing. I was just thinking it, and I'm there in the thinking. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that there was a probably like a very small fraction of it, because I'm still having this understanding or realization of the wear and tear of just normal things in life, so, but it was also, I was doing house chores, so like I couldn't necessarily give myself, and I was involved with a ton of people, like it would have gotten cut off, so I didn't give myself the chance to do that. Maybe if I had sat in that for a minute, but that's just theory. But yeah, in that particular moment, it wasn't as deep and profound as beep number 4, but there was always some kind of like little element or a little fraction of that pondering, deep sensing, but not necessarily in that beep number 1. It wasn't as obvious or prevalent, or it didn't take over my experience.
Yeah, it kind of seems like you are capable of a variety of ways of being thoughtful, and this one is just sort of a kind of a straightforward cognitive wordless thing where I'm thinking about how houses wear and tear, and then it can go to this meta depth, really opening myself up, and feelings fill in and empathy comes in, and that's a totally different kind of thought as far as your experience is concerned.
I would say that not entirely different. Like there's some aspects of it that are similar. Like I'm still using the same inner sensing. I'm still using this piece of me that goes into those kind of places. But I think that particular beep number 1, I just didn't necessarily activate that part as strongly as, say, for beep number 4, where in thinking those things, like I activated in that a little bit stronger.
So I'd like to compare beep number 2. Beep number 2, you were feeling impressed, proud of your daughter.
Yeah.
Her daughter's accomplishment.
Yes.
And I understood that as being a sort of a straightforward Lena experiencing this without the meta awareness. Am I right about that?
I would say that that's more accurate for beep number 2. I didn't have this whole profound meta Lena experience attached to that. I would say that, again, like beep number 1, there's this small fraction of myself that is aware and still sensing that feeling of being proud of my daughter, but not to the point where now I'm sitting in this deep thought. Like it's more just more straightforward than beep number 4. But there's still this like small Lena in my brain that is sensing and understanding and being aware, but it's just that it's calibrated differently with each experience.
So we don't want to make it an all or nothing kind of a thing. We're going to accept that there's a gradation here. But in number 2, it's more directly, I am feeling proud. And maybe at some other time I could have entered into the sensing of, I could have examined my pride and how that came, and that would have raised this ante on the sensing aspect.
Correct. Yeah, but you're right. For beep number 2, for that particular moment, I was not necessarily so high up on that scale of sensing. It was there, just not as obvious in my experience. I was more involved in the emotions of being proud and impressed.
Okay. Then I'm good, and I'm good with number 4. On to number 5.
Number 5. So I was still on the phone with my brother when this beep occurred, and I was listening to my brother, and he was talking about human DNA, and he was talking about how and why it activates. And as he's kind of like taking me down his whole belief and thought process, I am taking his words and visualizing them. So I'm having this visual experience to every word that he's saying. And in the time of the beep, he said human DNA. So I'm visualizing in my mind a double helix, and that was what the beep caught.
And so do you mean to say that as he speaks a sentence, which you might have a separate image for each chunk of that sentence?
Yeah, it's kind of like each word he's saying, he's narrating the movement in my visualization. Like he's narrating what's going to unfold next.
So if you had if the sentence that he was reading was something like, well, when Crick discovered the DNA and the RNA, you might have a picture of Crick, and then you might have a picture of DNA, and then you might have a picture of RNA, and then you might, is that?
Yeah, it's a little bit more fluid than just pictures. It's kind of like a scene, kind of like, rather than seeing as one person doing this, one person here and that, it's kind of like I would see Crick and Watson holding up, the antidote or something. I don't know, like something more movie-like kind of.
But it's changing with just about every word.
Yeah, whatever the narration is, whatever the next word is, determines how that's going to unfold in my visual process.
Okay.
It's kind of like seeing a story, like someone's telling you a story, and you take it into your imagination however you do that, and maybe you see it as unfolding slowly, or I don't know how everybody does it, but that's just how I do it.
And so at this particular moment, he's talking about double helixes, and you see it. He's talking about DNA, and you see a double helix.
Yeah, in that particular moment of that beep, I was visualizing a double helix. Yeah. Prior to the beep, he was talking about something a little bit more complex. So I was visualizing that, and then we started talking about DNA. So in that moment of the beep, yes, now I'm just solely seeing a double helix. Yeah.
And what exactly do you see?
Well, the two strands spiraled, and I can see the individual nucleotides matched and paired, and the background is kind of like a pinkish background, and the DNA strand has like bluish tones to it.
So this is a pretty detailed visualization of DNA, and the spiral's going this way, not going this way?
Yeah, it's like this.
Okay.
But it's like on its side. It's like not necessarily perfectly like spiral straight up. It's more tilted.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's talking, and this is basically your understanding of what he's saying. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he's giving me like a whole belief, or not a belief. He's giving me like a whole, I guess, science lesson. So like I'm tuning into it by taking every word he says and turning it into a visual movie so that I can see it. I can see what he's saying, not just hear. Yeah.
And folding back on our previous conversation, I'm understanding this as being not much sensing involved. This is he's talking, I'm seeing, he's talking, I'm seeing, he's talking, I'm seeing.
Well, I'm sensing in terms of not a meta thing, like I'm not folding back on myself, but I am sensing like I have to take some sort of action in myself to allow the visualization to occur, and that I am giving myself the chance to sense whatever that visualization will be. It's not something that I'm like forcing to happen. Like I'm not forcing a DNA to just stand in front of me. It's almost like I put myself in that sensing mindset, but not folding on myself meta thing. More so just putting myself in this sensing place, and whatever words come, the images will just be there. Like I'm not forcing the image to be there. I'm not directing how the image should be. It just appears.
So is this putting myself in the place to be able to or ready for or whatever? Is that in your experience, or is that just a description of the context? Well, what I'm doing here is I put myself in the place so that then when he says this, I can see a double helix.
I have to actively put myself there. It is part of my experience that I am allowing myself to put myself into that moment so that I can experience his words visually. Because if I don't put myself there, I may miss almost everything he's saying. I may not even be paying attention. I have to like totally put my attention into it. So my awareness is very high. Yeah.
And that putting myself in is directly apprehended before the footlights of my consciousness.
I would say yes.
This is not like I think we've talked about driving where driving can happen automatically and skillfully, and I can weave in and out of traffic or whatever and not pay attention to it at all.
Yeah.
This is not that. This is, I'm deciding, I got to make a left turn up here at the next intersection.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very involved, requires my attention and awareness kind of experience.
Okay, then I'm good.
Yep.
So my clock says we've been at this for 57 minutes or something like that. We wanted to leave time for questions.